Shirley? That's what I thought, and somebody told me it was Nottingham Trailer Court. Maybe we got the wrong name of the trailer court. But he's doing a good job, and I do want you to pray for him in the near future, in the not too distant future, when he gets his feet on the ground with the junior church and the youth group that he's helping with, and with his visitation for bus routes and all. We're going to start up a soul winning visitation again, and when we do that, I want you to make it a real matter of prayer. There's a lot of people that you know that we don't know, and you can give us names that we can reach it for outreach. One way you can help with that, and the other way is start asking God to let you have some time off to do it. The problem is we're running into a time to find that's open to have it. We all have so much going. I have Monday night, Tuesday nights tied up, and Wednesday nights tied up, Thursday nights tied up. Friday night's not a good night for visitation, so it may end up being on a Saturday morning. So pray for it and see if we can get together to where there's more folks going out on visitation. Some of it will be door to door, but don't let that scare you. We won't send you out with anybody that hasn't done it before. And it's not as scary as it sounds. Most people don't shoot you through the door or sick their dogs on you. I've been in the ministry for 43 years, and I've never had anybody sick their dogs on me. I've never even had anybody literally get mad and slam the door on me. Usually they'll say, no, thank you, I'm not interested. And I say, well, thank you, and leave. And that's about as far as it goes. I did have a dog chase me one time. There was a chain link fence, and I went in the fence, closed the gate behind me, and went to the door and knocked. And here come this dog, big old Rottweiler or something, around the edge of the house, barking and screaming at me. And I didn't even wait to. I'm glad I was younger then, because I didn't wait to unlock the gate. I went over the fence, but it was the only time he didn't get me. And I don't know about you, but I like to hear Pete preach. He has a fresh insight, fresh touch. If you can just get your mind in gear to the speed that he speaks at, you'll get a good bit out of it. And he's trying to learn to slow down for all of us that are older and can't stay up with that young speech. But we're glad he's preaching tonight.
Yeah, it's probably not going to happen tonight. If you saw me this morning, I was speaking fast. I was beat from the day before because I worked 10 hours and I had to go to a dinner in Philadelphia, and then they decided, let's play basketball. So after 3 hours of that, and then I try and run this morning, I felt every bit of it. So before I came in, I ran by the Turkey Hill, grabbed a 5-hour energy, and then for the rest of the morning and afternoon, I was off like a rocket ship off the ground, and it was fun. Turn your Bibles to Proverbs 29. But we do need help. I did the math before I came in today. I have 16 to 18 kids on the rolls. We get about 8 or 10 of them to show up every Sunday, but if we had them all, we'd already max out that van. So, and with the trailer park, now the trailer park, I got lost Saturday trying to find it because Brittany just said it's this address, and the address was wrong because the address she gave me, I Googled, sent me out to Pittsburgh. So I didn't think that was it. But it's all the way down 472 into Lancaster County. I think it's in Kirkwood, right on the left side. It's about a 20-minute drive. But what that does, it effectively cuts off Londonderry. So, hence, we had some logistics this morning trying to figure that out because it's the first time we ever went out there with the van. But we had 3 kids signed up yesterday. One of them came out today, which is pretty good. But for a first week, and so we're going to go back out there, visit, whatnot. But what we're going to have to do is if 15 or so come out from this side of the route, I'm going to have to figure out what to do with this side of the route. Now, the Peters come Sunday morning, but, man, I'm excited. I was excited to see them baptized this morning. I was excited to see, like, their whole entire clan come out. I was sort of afraid when I saw them get out. I'm like, man, you said 1 or 2. This is like 12. But I was excited this morning. I was excited to see the other 2 get baptized. I got back to their house. They were excited. They said, Mom, you got to get Sebastian, you got to get Gabby out there. And because of a family conflict, neither one got to come out. So them 2 are coming next week. I think she death threatened one of them. And the other girl will hopefully be out. It's a little tough with her, but we're going to get her out. And so we have 3 more lined up next week, and I'm excited again. But turn your Bibles to Proverbs 29 and look at verse 18. Where there is no vision, the people perish. Now I want you to fly over to Genesis 37. Genesis 37. We're going to talk a little bit tonight about the life of Joseph. Now Joseph is is, if there was ever a story in the Bible that puts up vision, it be Joseph. Now, the Bible says, where there is no vision, the people perish. And Joseph, had he had not gotten a vision, would have perished. If you know anything about the life of Joseph, his prime years 17 to 30, he spent about 90% of it in a prison or in slavery. Now, according to the world, that would be defeated. There's no way he could come out of it, but Joseph had a vision. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, as I come to you in prayer, Lord, wash me and cleanse me in your holy cleansing blood. Lord, bless this sermon. Speak to hearts tonight. In Jesus' name, amen. Charles Wesley said, without no vision, there will be no prophecy. Without no prophecy, there will be no movement of God. We need a vision from God. And it's just not for the preachers. It's for you sitting in the pews today. A lot of the times, church members will not do anything for God because they expect the preacher or his assistant or the deacon to do all the work of the church. That's not how it's supposed to be. God wants you to have a vision for this church. Now, it shouldn't be separate from the pastor, but you should have a vision for your place in this church. There needs to be a vision from you. And look at Genesis 37. We're going to pick up reading in verse number 5. And Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it to his brethren, and they hated him yet the more. And he said unto them, hear, I pray you, this dream which I have dreamed. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf arose, and also stood upright. And behold, your sheaves stood round about, and made obeisance to my sheaf. And his brethren said to him, shalt thou reign indeed over us, or shalt thou indeed have dominion over us? And they hated him yet the more for his dreams and for his words. And he dreamed yet another dream, and told it to his brethren, and said, behold, I have dreamed a dream more. And behold, the sun and moon and the 11 stars made obeisance to me. Sorry if I'm reading too fast. And he told it to his father and to his brethren. And his father rebuked him, and said unto him, what is this dream that thou hast dreamed? Shall I and thy mother and thy brethren indeed come to bow down ourselves to thee to the earth? And his brethren envied him, but his father observed the saying. See, Joseph just didn't have a regular old dream. This wasn't something he had some bad pizza the night before and he had a nightmare in the night. That wasn't this. This dream was sent by God. Now, Joseph didn't know everything that God was trying to tell him. Joseph didn't know he'd have to go through slavery. Joseph didn't know he'd have to sit in a prison. But at the end of the day, Joseph knew God had something special for him for the rest of his life. In order to be a vision, point number 1, there must be a vision. Verse 5 to 11. The first thing we notice about it, many people will not understand a vision given by God. Look at his brothers. His brothers hated him for the vision. They said, you think we're going to bow down to you? Maybe they were prideful. Maybe somewhere down in their heart they had already envied Joseph for being their father's favorite. But they had no understanding of Joseph's vision. Now, Joseph, maybe he wasn't the wisest by telling them all this, knowing your brothers hate you. You know, if I knew my siblings hated me, I wouldn't tell them something to sort of like fan the flames, but he did anyway. And also, his father and his mother didn't understand. In fact, his father went and rebuked him. It came from God, but his father rebuked him. Others may not understand your vision. You may have a vision for yourself in this church. Maybe it is going out helping us. I didn't know Pastor Gilbert was going to go talk about the visitation program. We talked a little bit about it on the ride home Thursday from Rising Sun. I had no idea he was going to mention it. Maybe God has a plan for you in there. Where do you see yourself in there? Where do you see yourself where God wants you to have you in that ministry? You should be somewhere within that ministry. There should be ministry somewhere in here for you. God has that vision for you. Do you see it? When you lay in bed at night and you think about the church, where does God ask you where you should be? Now, a lot of times Christians won't do anything because they say no to the vision. The first thing we see is it may not be understood. Second thing we see about a vision, it may be mocked. When his brothers saw Joseph coming, what was their indictment against their brother? Behold, the dreamer cometh. They mocked him for his vision. Joseph, he shouldn't have said anything, but it brought peer pressure. It brought mocking. He didn't really get anything out of this vision. It was tough for him. And the third thing is it must come from God. There's a difference between ambition and a vision. Ambition only satisfies yourself. Vision satisfies others. You see, there's no point in you trying to build up yourself through the church. That's not how God works. That's never how God will work. It's always, always, always to build up others. When you want to come in and you want to work, when you want to come help out, are you here for others or are you here for yourself? That's a question you need to ask yourself. But vision always helps others because it comes from God. Jesus, think about Jesus in his life and ministry. Now, many didn't understand his vision. Remember, he went back to Nazareth and he opened up Nazareth. I'll get it eventually. He opens up the scroll and he reads Isaiah, and if you read it, they all pretty much looked at it and said, ain't this the carpenter's son? And at the end of it, they want to stone him. They didn't understand Jesus' vision. They didn't understand Jesus' ministry. In fact, he had to move his whole ministry to Capernaum because they hated him so much. But it must come from God. First thing we see is there will be a vision. Second, there will be opposition. Now, a vision will give you hope through that opposition. You see, Joseph, his first thing that he had was internal. His brothers came against him. Remember when they saw him coming, he was supposed to check on his brothers in Dothan. I won't read the story because for time's sake, but they see him coming. What's the first thing they wanted to do with him? They wanted to kill him. But luckily, Reuben stepped up in the middle and said, well, okay, let's not kill our brother. Let's just sell him to these traders coming by. And so they locked him up, sent him to the slavery, and he went down to Egypt. His whole life was ruined that day. I'm pretty sure on his way down to Egypt with the Ishmaelite guys who were bringing him down there, he must be saying, God, why are you doing this to me? God, you said that they would bow down to me. God, you gave me a vision. What's going on here? You know, I mean, they're just questions I ask. You know, when I was a young man and things started happening in my life, I didn't understand. First question in my mind was, why, God? Why? When God called me to preach and bad things happened in the home or bad things happened in school and things that happened outside of my control that I didn't understand, what was the first question in my mind was, why? But if I had a vision, just like Joseph had a vision, you just have to press through it. Joseph pressed through it in spite of what his brothers did to him, in spite of the lies they told their father. Remember, they got his coat, dipped it in the blood, said, oh, Dad, a lion ate him. Well, they know what happened to him. In spite of all that, I mean, look at the end of his life. When his brothers get round about him, he had every right to probably slay them. He had every authority to do so given to him by Pharaoh. And what did he say? What God meant for evil, what you guys had meant for evil, God meant for good. There was a vision in spite of what his brothers were going to do. And God can turn evil into his good. You know, there was many evils in my life in the younger years that had happened. But I look back on it, if it wasn't for those evils, if it wasn't for those bad times, I would not be the guy I am today. I would not even be in the ministry. Maybe I'd be soiled. Maybe there'd be other things in my life. But it was by God's grace. Those bad things that others had meant for evil, God turned around and used for good in my life. We saw the brothers. That was an internal thing. If you look at chapter 39, you see the outward attack, the external Potiphar's wife. If you look at verse 7, and it came to pass after these things that his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph, and she said, lie with me. But he refused and said unto his master's wife, behold, my master wotteth not what is with me in the house, and he hath committed all that he hath in my hand. There is none greater in this house than I, neither hath he kept back anything from me, but thee, because thou art his wife. How then can I do such great wickedness and sin against God? Joseph, if you keep on reading, you find that she comes to him when no one's in the house. He could have committed this great sin, and no one would have ever known but God. But he knew the eyes of God were upon him. He knew he still had a vision, that he couldn't let foil for 30 seconds of pleasure. He knew God had a purpose in his life, and he wasn't going to let her destroy that for him. But notice, she came to him day by day. She tried to wear him down. She tried to get him through his emotions, through physicality. And by the way, she wasn't no ugly chicken. I mean, let's be honest. The king doesn't marry, or the king's second in command, he doesn't marry no ugly woman. She was probably very, very good looking. And so Joseph, thinking he's probably 17, 18, 19 at this time, it's not easy for him to say no. Yet because he had a vision from God, he said, how can I do such great wickedness in the sight of God? Through it all, he had that vision. It was God-given. He knew, hey, this is not the end. I'm not supposed to come down here to Egypt so I can ruin whatever God gave me with you. That's pretty much what he was saying. And, well, we know what happened. Potiphar comes back in. She lies. Again, another lie. And what happens to him? He's sent to prison. He's spent in that dungeon for the next 12 years of his life. And that's rough. Now, prisons back then aren't what like prisons are today. Prisons back then, you might have got a few meals a day or a meal a day, but you didn't have the commodities, heat, air conditioning, anything like that. One thing I got this quote. I got to find it in the mess that I wrote here because I got a bunch of notes for this. It says, "We have learned more from Paul's trip to prison than any of his missionaries' journeys." That Andrew Bonner said that. Why? Because when Paul was sent to prison, what did he do? He penned the words of most of your New Testament. He began to write it. So if Paul never did go to prison, if Paul never got chained down, if Paul never went to that terrible place, you wouldn't have some of your Bible today. God has a purpose for every hardship in our life. And if you have a vision, you can get through that hardship. I know right now it's got to be tough with Lois. I know it's got to be tough because she demands so much attention and so much this and so much that. And then the other Lois demands so much attention and so much. It's tough. And Lois, it's tough right now. But God, he's giving you something. You can get through this with success. I know you can, because if you got a vision, you can get through anything. Third thing we see is, the second thing we saw, there will be opposition. Third thing, a vision will keep hope alive. It will keep hope alive in spite of hardships. Remember, Joseph goes into that prison, and I'm going to try and fly through most of his life tonight, even though that's rough to do with Joseph. He's in this prison, and remember the two men who came to him? The butler and the baker? And they came to him, and one eventually had his head not cut off, but he was hung. And the other one goes back. He says, "Hey, when you do get back there, please remember me. Get me out of this prison." Did the guy remember him? No, he forgot him. But God meant that for good also. Because when the time came, when Pharaoh had a dream that none of his magicians, none of his wise men, no one in the kingdom could give it, that baker, I think it was the baker, he had a memory. Hey, that guy in the prison, Joseph, let's bring him back out. Yeah, he told my dream, and God used it for good. If Joseph didn't come right at the right time, he might have got out of prison, but that would have been the end of the story. But because he came out at the right time, all of a sudden we see him second in command. He literally went from the pit to the prison, right to the palace, because he persevered. The fourth thing we see is there's a vision's requirements. I'm going to make this relevant to us. It requires hard work and prayer. D.L. Moody. Now, D.L. Moody, he won millions to Jesus Christ here and in Europe. He said, pray as if it depended all on God. Work as if it depended all on you. Hudson Taylor, and Hudson Taylor is one of my favorite missionaries. He worked many, many years in China, saw tens of thousands saved. In fact, it said many of the converts still in China are a direct result of Hudson Taylor's ministry. Now remember, China closed off many, many years ago, but the people who Hudson Taylor saved before China closed off are still there. And he's one of my favorite stories. He said this: many Christians estimate difficulties in light of their own resources and thus attempt little and often fail in the little they do. All God's giants, and he could be talking about Noah, he could be talking about Gideon, he could be talking about Abraham. All God's giants have been weak men who did great things for God because they reckoned on his power and presence to be with them. If you know anything about Hudson Taylor's life, he was a man who was always sick. He had to take 2 or 3 trips home from England, back to England, just because he had gotten so physically sick. He was a man who suffered with depression. He had many other ailments, and yet he did such a great work with God. Why? Because he knew God's resources were unlimited. Many times we focus on our own resources. We say, well, I don't have time for God in this time slot because work, because of this, because of that. Why don't you stop using your own limited resources and go to God's? Because last I checked, he owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. He owns everything in us. He can move mountains. He can do things. We just have to trust him to do it. If it's money we need, he owns everything. How hard can it be? I mean, I remember stories of Hudson Taylor where he had inherited a hospital from another missionary work, and he runs out of money, which, if you know anything about Hudson Taylor, he ran out of money often. He runs out of money, and instead of panicking, instead of packing his bags and going back to England, he wasn't a citizen of China, he could have done that. He gets down in his room with a couple of trusted men in the hospital, and they start praying. Day when they run out of food, knock comes on the door. Check comes in from England. Anonymous, $10,000. How did that happen? Was it just happen chance, circumstance, or whatever? No, because God worked through those ways, and God can still work today if you have a vision to go do something for him today. I would like to preach this more to teenagers, and there are some here. But today in this church, what does God have a vision for you to do? When you go home tonight, I want you to ask yourself, what does God have a vision for me to do? First thing it's going to take hard work. Nothing ever got accomplished for God without hard work. It may take some hardships. It may take a broken heart here or there. There are many kids in Delaware. I got in the church, gotten them saved, and we saw great things, and then all of a sudden they just stopped coming. Mom got offended, or dad got offended. It was hard. We went to Londonderry. I had 10 little Mexicans come out every day. Then all of a sudden, Thursday, none of them came. Friday, I saw one riding his bike. I said, hey, why don't you come out today? Oh, my mom doesn't like what you're saying. And that was all he said, and then he went into his house. That hurt. I almost broke my heart because he had gotten to know the kids the first 3 days. You were starting to build a relationship. We could see them coming on Sundays. We could see them coming on Wednesdays, and just like that, gone. And to be honest, that Thursday I went home with Chris, and I told Chris, I said, Chris, I feel like we're a little defeated. Even Friday after we left and we had a couple kids come out, that I said, Chris, I feel defeated. I said, nothing happened here right that could have happened right. And yet we saw what happened today. One of them got baptized from Londonderry. A whole entire clan came out. I'm afraid to say family. And not only that, we have 2 other families in there that normally would come out. And I'm excited. I'm happy for it because what we saw nothing, God was working in the background doing something. And that got me excited. Second thing we need faith to see it through. What you may not see today, God may have in there for tomorrow. They asked Helen Keller. Now, if you know Helen Keller, I think she was born blind, deaf, and dumb and to speak. And she had learned to talk, and they asked her, they said, what is worse than not seeing? What is worse than being blind? And she said, having sight but no vision. Having the ability to be able to see and yet to have no purpose in life. That would be worse than being blind. And yet many Christians, they walk around today. They get into their problems and then that's it. Kaput. They give up on God. They wave the white flag. They start running backwards. You know, we sing the song, you know, we're, I don't want to say marching design because we just sung that. We're in God's infantry. We're soldiers. We're this, we're that. And yet how many of us have gotten the white flag and turned around when the first sign of opposition showed up? This morning, we ran into opposition. We had 6 lined up be baptized today. But there's this thing. There's this guy. His name's Satan. He fights hard. He fights hard for everything. I didn't know a family problem had happened Saturday. I visited them all Friday. I got who was coming down Friday. I was excited. I was ecstatic. Make the text this morning. Yeah, 3 of them ain't coming. Why? Well, it's complicated. I get to the house, and she says, well, this one happened, and then this one started fighting with this one, and so they had to go back to here. Man, all that happened when we got them signed up to be baptized. That just happens by, random circumstance. I don't believe that happened. Devil will fight hard. And when the devil fights hard, do you have the resilience? Do you have the push on, the vision to keep pushing because God has something special for you? Why did God put you here? He has to have something special for you. It just can't be we live and we die and then that's it. There has to be more to this life. There has to be a little push on for us to do something here. And the last thing it takes the spending of your time. The spending of your time. A lot of things. Vision will dictate how we spend our time. It will dictate how much time you spend on your computer at home. It will dictate how much time you spend watching TV. It will dictate how much time you spend video games or with friends or with acquaintances. And time can be spent in so many different ways, and it's precious. I mean, time comes and it goes just like this. I mean, talk to anyone that's as old as Pastor Gilbert, and they tell you, they were 21 yesterday and 65 today. And I'm fired. Anyway, how many times have we heard those stories? I remember I'm sitting in the restaurant, and Hard Times, that was his name. I don't know what his real name is. I'm real curious. Maybe I'll go back Tuesday and find out what his name is. He's 81, 82, and Bruce is sitting across from him, 60, and you hear the conversations about how old they are. And Bruce is turning 60, and our time says, I remember 60, that was yesterday. And Bruce looks over at me and says, I remember when I was 21, that was yesterday. I said, man, in 2 days, you guys went from 60 to 81. That's not good. But time is precious. If we have a vision for doing something for God, it will dictate how we spend our time. You know, I have a vision for the route. I spend all day Friday, with the exception on the phone with Virginia for speeding tickets. Outside of that, I spent all day Friday out visiting, trying to find that trailer park. It was hard. I got lost 3 times. I'm calling Brittany. Hey, Brittany, I'm on 472. I just passed this little reservoir. I'm lost again. Keep driving, make a let go there. Don't ever get directions from Brittany, by the way. Anyway, I got lost 3 times. I get this. And then I went to Bob and Barb's house. On the way home, God said, hey, stop by the Peters house because I couldn't get them earlier. Knock on the door, and I had to get the permission slip, whole 9 yards. And I ended up spending a half hour to 40 minutes in their house. Don't ask me how that happened. But I ended up spending half hour to 40 minutes in a house, building a relationship with the parents. And Wendy, at the end of it, says, you know what? I'll have a few there. I didn't realize that'd be like 9 or 10 or 11 or 12. But she said, I'll have a few there. And we saw him show up today because the Holy Spirit said, hey, turn in here. What's the Holy Spirit asking of you today? What's God asking of you today? What is it? All Christians are called to 4 things. They're called to salvation. You know, if you weren't saved, it'd be tough for you to sit here. You're called to salvation, separation, sanctification, separated from the world, sanctified unto God, and for service. What's God's vision for you? I want to ask you this last question, and then I'll quit for the night. What goals would you set if you knew you could not fail? Ask yourself that. What goals would you set if you knew you could not fail? There was an optimist kid, and there was I can't remember the story, a pessimistic kid. Now, optimist means he was happy no matter what, and the pessimistic kid was depressed no matter what, and they were twins. So the mom sent them to the psychiatrist. So the psychiatrist, what he did is he got the depressed kid and put him in a room with a whole bunch of new toys. Thought, you know, that would cheer him up. And then he got the optimist kid, and he put him in a room full of horse manure. You know, he would think the kid would be depressed. He would come back and find the kid crying. So after about an hour or 2, he comes back. He stops by the depressed kid first, and depressed kid's just sitting there, and all the new toys are untouched. He said, why are you sitting here? Why are you so depressed? He says, I'm afraid I'm going to break the toys. He says, okay. And the kid's still depressed. And he goes into the optimist room. And the optimist is sitting in there like it's the 4th of July, running through the manure, looking through it, looking for something. He said, why are you so happy? He said, with all this horse manure around, there must be a pony somewhere nearby. Where's your vision today? Is it on the negatives? We can't have revival. We can't see America come back to God. I'm sick and tired of hearing that speech. I really am. The way we're going, no wonder why we're never going to see anyone saved, because we're so depressed about the here, the now and now. It gets better in the sweet by and by, folks. Whether or not we see revival again, and I believe we can, I believe we will, we still have to end up doing service for our Lord because he's still alive. He didn't die last night. All the people that got baptized today still proves God works. It still proves he's still in the saving business. And yet, what is our vision? How can we enhance the kingdom of God? How can we push for it? Because whether we like it or not, it's still coming. It may be here tomorrow. It may be here tonight. It may be here in a couple weeks. We don't know when Jesus is coming back. But what's your vision until he does? What is it? Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, as I come to you in prayer, Lord, wash me. Thank you for today. Thank you for this message. Lord, I pray right now as we go home, I pray we will not go to sleep tonight without maybe writing down a set of goals of what you want us to do, Father. Bless us. Give us protection on the ride. In Jesus' name.
All right, just before we go, he reminded me of a story. Pessimist looked at the glass and said, that glass is half full. Optimist looked at the glass, the pessimist looked at the glass and said, that glass is half empty. Optimist looked at the glass, says that glass is half full. The realist says, you're both crazy, I just drank the rest of it. So you got that choice. Are we going to become involved with what God has for us to do, or are we going to complain because it's not enough, or complain because it's too much, or are we going to get involved with what God has asked us to do? It's a good message tonight, Pete. I got something from it. I hope everybody else did. I have a complete outline. I might preach sometime. If I preach it at the college, you won't tell them I got it from you, will you?
I'll just preach it before you do.
Okay. All right, let's be dismissed. Patrick, close in prayer for us, please.
Should have told me on the way back.